steamy, gay, hockey romance. If you have a pair of eyes and an internet connection, then you have 100% heard of Heated Rivalry. Today, I really wanted to discuss what it is about Heated Rivalry that's resonated so much with me. In case you are not chronically online and you're just unaware of what Heated Rivalry is, it is a 2025 mini-series by the Canadian network Crave, starring Connor Story and Hudson Williams. The story is adapted from the Game Changers series by Canadian author Rachel Reed, and it's based on the second book of the same name, Heated Rivalry. We have Russia's Ilya Ryazanov and Canada's Shane Hollander, and these are two very young star potential players in the hockey field. They both meet at a very young age and immediately pick up this rivalry on the ice for who will come out on top, who will be number one. What starts off as a brooding competition on the ice quickly becomes something much hotter off of it. Welcome back, or welcome if you're new here. My name is Faiz and I make videos about things that I find interesting, and I also do vlogs. So I had to make this video about why Heated Rivalry is, to me, so much more than just smut. Just for a little bit of background, I need to present my credentials to let you know why exactly I'm more than qualified to be speaking about this. I have been watching BL since 2020. I've been in this game for 5 years. I've gone from the very bottom to the very top, so I'm very well versed. I'm true to this, not new to this. Then on top of that, do you see all of these tabs? Yeah. Do you know what these are for? Peep it. Yeah, guys, when I say I'm well read on this topic, I mean I'm well read on this topic. If you know, you know. As with any good journey, we all have to start somewhere, and I think there's no better place than to start with why. Initially, I saw the adverts like everybody else, and the first thing that struck me was that this is adapted from a book. This is the perfect opportunity for me to redeem myself from Red, White, and Royal Blue. Now, back when Red, White, and Royal Blue was going on, when the movie was about to come out, I took the challenge to read the book so that I could watch the movie. And I took it on with my friend Mumu. Mumu and I had a turbulent experience with the book, and it only got rockier as we swayed into the movie. Naturally, I saw this as an opportunity for us to improve upon our past experiences and gain something new. We needed trust to be restored in these types of adaptations. Mumu obviously rejected me, so I had to pursue this by myself. And so I did. My journey began with the book. Obviously, I had to read the digital copy because the physical copy, not in the cards, not in the budget, eesh. All of that aside, the first thing that you're hit with in the first 2 pages, and that's why this is not a spoiler, you're hit with steam. You're just hit right off the bat with it. But that's not really what drew me in, because like I said, guys, I'm well read. It takes a lot more than that to get me hooked. Reading this, I thought to myself, okay, sure, that's a way to go about it. But the way that it was written, Miss Rachel, was so akin to fanfiction, in that a lot of the times fanfiction will use smut, steamy scenes to deepen the reader's understanding of the characters' feelings towards each other. Now, reading this scene from Miss Rachel, I thought to myself, wow, I didn't expect this level of depth from the characters so early on in the book. I mean, we're literally 2 pages in, and already I feel like I can relate to Shane Hollander? Question mark? Such a great introduction and such a good way to hook people. So she had me hooked in the first 2 pages, and then I read the entire prologue and I was certain I had to continue. Now, carrying on. Very early on in the book, I started realizing a lot of similarities to one of my favorite BLs of all time, Bad Buddy, which I actually recently rewatched. The premise, practically the same. And this just made me all the more excited to keep going, because now I had this comparison, this expectation in my head. And goodness, did it live up to it? That's my overall scope of the book. It was really entertaining, and not to mention it was really well paced. Contrary to what you'd expect, starting off right away with a smart scene, the book is actually a slow burn. When I explained it to my friend Sherelle, I explained it to her as this is a sort of reverse slow burn because you're thrust right into it, but you kind of have to wait for it to thaw out before you can really get to all of the juice and the story. And she coined the term speed freeze. Opposite of a slow burn? A speed freeze. I love it. I love it. Yes. So I would highly recommend reading the book. I wouldn't recommend buying it physically. No. Well, if you live in South Africa, at least. If you live outside of Canada, I don't know about purchasing this physical copy. Electronic copies do fine. Now, moving on to the show. Naturally, as with any adaptation, it can't be 100% accurate to the source material, especially if they're in two different forms, literature versus film. It's just never going to translate as smoothly as one would want it to. That's kind of also the fun that I find with a lot of adaptations, is that even though you can't translate with 100% accuracy, you can always find something new in the story to harp on and accentuate. A great example of this would be Love in the Big City and Interview with the Vampire. It's just each separate space of media feels like it's telling a different aspect of the story. It fills the story with so much more depth and so much more dimension that you just learn to fall so heavily into it. That's exactly how I feel about all the liberties that were taken in the show. It all was to the benefit of the story being told on screen, but it was also in honor of the source material. You have expectations, and sometimes they can be curved in a good way. I think my biggest comparison between the show and the book is just the source of the tension in the story. In the book, it's really more of they're both so stupid in love. When are they finally gonna come out with it? When are they gonna say to each other, hey, I love you? In the series, it really is a back and forth. Will they, won't they? What's going on? Will they? Won't they? So there's two different fluctuations, two different levels of tension that you really receive from both pieces of media, which is why I would recommend both. A great way that I think the show changed some things is the book is really packed to the brim with a lot of steamy scenes. And what the show chose to do, instead of jam-packing the show with those scenes, they instead decided to build on a lot of the side characters, friends that we don't really see much of in the book. That was one thing I really wished from the book, to see a lot more personal interactions and a lot more development in terms of the friendships that were present outside of Ilya and Shane's relationship. They really did a lot of that, especially when it came to a lot of the girlfriends. For example, number one would be Svetlana. She is someone who is important in the story, but the way that she's written in the show is so much more fulfilling than in the books, which I highly appreciate. Kudos to them. Also, in the book, when you're reading an English book, they can't necessarily start writing Russian out of nowhere. In the show, they just start speaking Russian. You have to rely on subtitles, girl. That's another immersive element that you really miss when you're reading the book. They seriously hopped on it. They said Russian. And then I think my biggest point would have to be the way that the smut is written. Obviously, you can't necessarily write what the characters are thinking on a screen. It's not very easy to see exactly what's going on inside their head, but interpretation, beautiful thing. And I love how they lead us through the lighting. The coloring on the show is really spectacular, really amazing, and it really does evoke certain senses in you that allow you to interpret these interactions between the characters in many different ways, honestly, compared to when you're reading it and you're told, okay, character A feels this, character B feels that. It just makes the scene so much more interesting to watch. You get to interpret the dynamic in ways that you wouldn't necessarily think to if you don't look too hard. There's a lot of things going on, and you can watch if you just want to watch, but you can also look deeper if you want to. That's why it's literally for everyone. If you just want something fun, go for it. But if you're looking for more, it's there waiting for you. The fans, the actors, the overall response to the show, firstly, cannot appreciate more the fact that we're using Google actors. That is a term I stole from Google Idols, where essentially it's just people we've never seen before. People who are coming out of the woodworks, who have just as much, probably even more, talent than the people who have been forced onto our screens for a minute now. Timothy, I'm looking at you. Honestly, Hudson and Connor's stories of how they came working day jobs to being able to do what they love full time, wow, endearing. And it's not just that they came in and then they were there. They came in and they worked for it. This is why we need to be putting more efforts into our 5 cents and a dream projects. You never know, magic can be made with enough creativity, effort, and a vision. And I stand by that. Hashtag weak hero class 1. I really hope that if the budget, which it most certainly will, increases for the next season of Heated Rivalry, that they don't lose the essence of what we've gotten thus far, because seriously, that is a thing. It tends to happen a lot because the show was good, but not in the same way that it was good the first time. Focusing more on Hudson and Connor, I think it's very special to witness their friendship. I think that is really one of my favorite things, when 2 or even more actors come onto a project and they have this chemistry that translates on screen so well, only to come off of it and be in this genuine, authentic relationship with each other. It's so refreshing to see. It's so lovely to witness. It's one of my favorite things ever, honestly. That's another aspect, another layer of why the fans are so heavy onto Heated Rivalry, because beyond just the show, you get the actors as well. At the end of the day, being a part of a fandom, enjoying something, is really about the fun of it. Getting to kiki with the actors, that's just another added layer of fun. Seriously, have you seen Connor and Hudson? The 2 of them together are just pure chaos. Even looking at their digital footprints, which is very real. It's very real and very readily available. That is just something that's so funny to me and makes people so much more relatable. And I'm saying this as someone who, one of my favorite celebrities, artists in general, is Conan Gray. And if you know anything about Conan Gray, his business is just everywhere. And not business to the point of breach of privacy, just business to the point of, I have a history, as most of us do. Considering this new 2016 trend where, show you a picture from 2016, a lot of us have things going on. You really do feel as though this is a human, this is a person who has real interests, real quirks, and that just makes it so much more interesting to engage with them compared to the average celebrity experience where they are this spitting image of whatever a celebrity is supposed to be. Most of the time they're just boring. But I do understand there's this whole thing about privacy, whatever cool, fine, to each their own. I do think there's a way to go about privacy that doesn't diminish the reality of what and who you are. But hey, that's just me. Another thing, kids are learning Ruski. And when I say kids, I mean me. I learned how to read Ruski. It's actually quite simple. The grammar, I'll get back to her someday. We'll have our time in the sun. That's just another fun thing that comes out of shows like this. They incorporate elements so strongly, and then suddenly you feel the urge to engage with it, to live it, to experience it. And one way of doing that is, for example, learning a language. You don't have to learn the language to fluency. A lot of people are doing fan art. A lot of people are writing fan fiction. There's just so much room for healthy engagement, productive engagement. And when I say this, I'm also talking about things like the edit, guys. The edit that had to be removed from TikTok, but the kids sent it through a Google Drive. Do you see this? This is building community. It's so present. If you haven't seen the edit by now, you can find it. You don't have to find the Google Drive. I promise you, you can find it somewhere. The creativity and the community coming together, brilliant. All you ever need from a fandom. Let's not forget about Ember and Ice. Another thing for the fandom to come together over. Now we're gonna get into the more spoiler section where I talk about things in the story that really resonated with me a bit more specifically, and also some scenes that were my favorite, that I really appreciated, that I really enjoyed, especially from the books that didn't really get into the show. Number 1, Ilya has a bear tattoo. I can see why they wouldn't add that in the show. It's not completely necessary. Even Ilya himself says Ilya could admit to himself now that the tattoo was a bit much, but he'd been 18 when he'd gotten it, and it gave Shane something to tease him about, so he couldn't hate it. He has a tattoo. It's not that significant to the story, except for one cute scene right in the beginning, actually. The very first scene, the prologue. That's the only place where it really matters. But I just thought you should know he does have a bear tattoo on his chest. Another thing I don't think you guys understand is how much the freckles matter. There are only 30 chapters in the story. Do you know how many times they mention freckles? 22 times. In 30 chapters, you're gonna mention freckles 22 times. Obviously, I'd seen Hudson and Connor before the show started, and I'd noticed, hold on, Hudson doesn't have freckles. I hope they don't forget about that. And they didn't. They added the freckles. They added the freckles. I just had to go crazy about that because that matters. You don't notice it in the show because he mentions it like once or twice, but trust me, it's serious. It really is that deep. As I mentioned in the book section, there's a disturbing amount of identity I find with Shane Hollander. I felt like I was reading a book about myself because there were just some things where I was like, Shane, what? After watching the show, come to find out Shane is supposed to be written as a neurospicy character. Oh, am I finding out things about myself? This has to be my favorite part of the story. The emotional dynamics between Hollander and Rozanov it's just so complementary. I don't know how else to explain this other than they're opposites but the same. And I would explain this by saying Rozanov, he's emotional. Hollander is also emotional, but they're both emotional in such completely different ways. Rozanov is very emotional and aware. Hollander is very emotional and unaware. We see, even in the monologue that he presents, his lovely Russian monologue, he is outwardly admitting all of these things about himself. He's so aware of his situation, how he feels in the situation, everything happening in his life, and his feelings about Hollander. Right? And he even admits that, Hollander, these are my feelings about you. Whereas with Hollander, I have feelings and it could be A, it could be B. I'm not really sure. I'm not really certain, but I feel them. They're there. I just don't know what this is. I don't know what this means. Okay, this is editing me, and I'm realizing there were quite a few points that I forgot to emphasize with the point of Ilya and Shane having such different approaches to their emotions. I think it also really reflects the environment that they grew up in. For example, Shane has always had the space to figure out his feelings and to experience them, whereas Rozanov hasn't really had that kind of liberty, that kind of freedom. If he doesn't perform at his most efficient, if he's not 100% aware of what he's doing all the time, it could end very badly for him. But when it comes to Shane, he's allowed the room to mess up. He's allowed the room to express and experience himself to his fullest. And I think that's really why they complement each other so well, because one really is a mold for the other one to grow in a way that they never knew was possible. So for Rozanov, it's that uncertainty of safety and sort of the disbelief that it can be real. And for Shane, it's the level of certainty and the level of security that one doesn't have. It's sort of acknowledging the privilege that he does have and seeing how it reflects back at him through Rozanov, and also being able to extend that towards him. I think that's really the importance with Shane, is that while he can be ignorant in the sense of not understanding where Rozanov is coming from, he does understand that it's something he can give to Rozanov. And that's kind of where their miscommunication comes in, because when Rozanov sees it, he doesn't expect it to fall onto him, and when Shane sees it, he can't understand why Rozanov is so unwilling to accept this thing that is so natural to him, but all the while not seeing how it can be so unnatural for Rozanov. And even when they have their little comforting moments, Shane still finds a way to be there for Rozanov in a way that accommodates to how Rozanov is willing to ease into that sense of safety. And now segueing into the next part, which is the scene right at the end after the big reveal, all the beans have been spilled. We have the book's version, which is Yuna and Dad end up drinking beer, but in the show they end up drinking Russian vodka, which they have Russian vodka on the table to invoke the sense of assurance, especially for Rozanov, considering how in this adaptation they really chose to focus on his backstory and his family dynamic. So knowing all that we know about him, to come here and find a sense of home that he never could really find when he was at home is both ironic and endearing at the same time. Okay, and then guys, the Moscow arc is very important. So Ilya's dad is dead, he's going through the worst time, and he obviously calls Hollander, or Hollander calls him. They have this autonomous type of thing going on. It doesn't really matter who calls who, it's just natural now. They both have these casual conversations, and mostly casual from Shane's side, because he really wants to be able to comfort Ilya. And through these conversations that they have, especially this one in particular, towards the end of chapter 19, the conversation that they have is very comforting because it's so mundane. Ilya allows himself to fall into that place of comfort because with all this distance between himself and Hollander, the place that he's supposed to call home is the least comforting place for him to be right now. So having this conversation with Hollander obviously means so much to him that it's almost like he can't help being comforted by Hollander because where else is he gonna get it? And in this, he can sense that maybe I'm letting myself go a little too much. Then he proposes, what if I married Svetlana? It could be easy, it could be convenient, I could move. And Shane, Mr. Hollander, counters this by saying, come to my cottage. Come to the most comfortable place for me in the world. Chapter 19. It had also just occurred to him that his heart was beating like he was in the middle of a run, and his mouth was dry. He had actually just invited Ilya to the cottage. The fact that he had even done that was absurd. But what if Ilya actually accepted? What if he had Ilya all to himself, at Shane's favorite place in the world? If there was no one to interrupt them, no one to hide from, no one to remind them of all the reasons they shouldn't want each other. Do you see, guys? He doesn't realize until after the fact, oh my gosh, I've just done what I've done. And this is where he and Ilya differ so much because he acts on impulse, he acts on his feelings so erratically. And that, to an extent I can imagine, frightens Ilya because he has to build himself up in order to actually do something. Now here's a scene that really speaks to Razanov. This, by the way, is when Shane is dating Rose Landry. Ilya hadn't texted Hollander in over 2 months. Not that they'd ever regularly contacted each other before, but this silence had been particularly deafening. The past few weeks had been the first time that Ilya felt sure that if he texted him, Shane wouldn't reply. Shane would probably show the text to his movie star girlfriend, and they would laugh at how pathetic Ilya was. Now do you see the sense of insecurity that Ilya has? He's so scared to make the first move, to come out, to say something, anything, even just casually texting. Now imagine how much it took for him to tell him, Yeti Belublu, I love you. In the cottage, guys, you see, if you've watched the show, you know there's a significance to the number 9. Now, in the book, it's never stated. There are no specific numbers given. But there is a scene where Shane was struck with the sudden horrific thought that Razanov would be stuck inside him. They would have to call 911 or something. Now, one thing that I will say, they kept to the T exactly the same. Chapter 13, they kept it word for word, scene for scene, action for action, and that I approve of. If you don't know, chapter 13 is the couch scene with the ginger ale and the tuna melt. I don't even need to read you chapter 13 because you already know, you have it memorized by now, right? He didn't like being the one. I can't read these out loud. No. Shane had always... I can't read that. No. Yeah, anyways. So, when Ilya is in Russia, he and Shane obviously have these phone calls, these video calls and whatever. And it's a very suggestive scene, but then they straight away cut to the next scene. In the book, this is one of the best steamy scenes. I don't think you understand. This is really... It's so akin to the prologue, which is why I think this really matters, the most to me at least, because they're on the video call, but they're playing single player, if you get my drift. They do the business, they reach the finish line. I should let you sleep, Shane said. Da. Yes. Okay. And then Shane kissed the tips of 2 fingers and reached out and touched them to the screen. Ilya's heart stopped. Do you see how Shane is doing the things that Shane is doing? And as we continue, Ilya then explains he was never supposed to have fallen in love with Shane Hollander. He should have ended it long before, because now it was going to hurt so much. What on earth else could they do? Do you see what I mean? There's so many layers. That's the last of the quotes that I have to share with you guys. In conclusion, I really appreciate Heated Rivalry for all that it's doing for the culture, for the kids, for the sake of fun. Let me know if you guys have had similar thoughts. What do you think? What's your interpretation of some of these? What have you noticed? Some things that maybe I didn't mention. How do you interpret certain scenes? How was your experience if you read the book and you've watched the series? Hopefully I can make more of these soon. But thank you everyone for watching. I hope you enjoyed. And also comment if there's anything else you want me to talk about, because I like talking about things that I like, that I find interesting. Period. I just like talking. Yes. Thank you guys so much for watching. Hope you enjoyed. Danke, Minsa. Bye.